Gregg Fishman, who is running for the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, District 3. I'd just like to note that Gregg is on the SMUD board right now, just a fun fact. So welcome, Gregg. We're going to give you from now until around 3:30, just because we're starting a little bit late.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
So we'll give you 3 to 4 minutes to do an intro for yourself, and then we have a bunch of questions we'd like to ask you.
All right, sure. Thank you. First, thanks for this opportunity. Appreciate the chance to get to know you and have you get to know me a little bit better and what I stand for. I am a member of the SMUD board. I've been on the board now for about 6 years. I'm running for Sacramento County Supervisor in District 3, which is kind of the northeast side of Sacramento County. It includes all of Arden Arcade, Fair Oaks, Carmichael, and up into Foothill Farms and Antelope a little bit too. So why am I running? County government is where the rubber meets the road in so many ways, including climate change and improving our environment, but also in terms of maintaining health and human services. Obviously, we're meeting by Zoom because we have this COVID issue that we're dealing with, and the county has not proven particularly effective at that. That's job one. We need to make sure that our residents are safe, that the dollars that are coming in to deal with COVID-19 are spent appropriately. I intend to do that as a member of the board. The environment is incredibly important to me. You know, as a member of the SMUD board, I'm really proud that we've declared a climate emergency, and we've asked our staff to look at accelerating what were already, frankly, some of the most aggressive utility goals in the country to reduce carbon output. So we're asking them to see if we can get to net zero by 2030, 10 years faster than we'd previously asked. So that's a huge challenge, but I think the SMUD staff is up for it, and the board is ready to lead in that direction. For Sacramento County, we don't even have a viable climate action plan. They started one. There's one that's kind of internal for county government operations that has some decent elements in it, but that was 8 years ago. It hasn't been updated since then. Many of those elements have been allowed to wane a little bit. And there is no external plan in terms of how are we going to manage carbon reduction for the region with land use, housing decisions, transportation options. The county has just fallen flat on that. So it would absolutely be one of my goals to reinvigorate that process within the first year of my term, and come back with, have staff come back with a viable climate action plan that moves the county forward, that collaborates with the city of Sacramento, with SMUD, with the Air Quality Management District, and with other cities in the county to make sure that we're doing everything we can to reduce our carbon output as a region. This has to be a regional effort, and there has to be collaboration. It's unconscionable, frankly, that there hasn't been. Housing and homelessness, clearly other big issues that I need to address as a member of the board. These go hand in glove, frankly, with some of the climate action goals. We have to come up with a housing plan that makes sense, that incentivizes infill, transit-oriented, all-electric development, and solar as much as appropriate. We have to deal with our homelessness issue in a way that is compassionate, but also makes sure that we are doing the right thing for the environment, because the homelessness issue is having a great impact on the river, on the American River Parkway, and frankly on air quality, because they're burning wood and other carbon-based fuels for cooking and to stay warm in the wintertime. We have to come up with some real solutions for homelessness if we want to meet those carbon goals as well. Those are kind of my basic tenets. I mean, there's so much more. Again, I've served on the SMUD board for 6 years. I worked for a different 6 years at the California State Association of Counties. So I think I have a really good understanding of what county government does. I worked side by side with some of the best county supervisors from other counties around the state. We kind of fostering and promoting some of their county programs to other counties. So, you know, let's not reinvent the wheel. Where there's a good idea, let's bring that back to Sacramento and put it in place here. I'm ready to do this. I think Sacramento County is ready for a change. We can break some of the gridlock that's existed on the board from a political standpoint, and I'm the guy to do that.
Excellent, thank you. So yeah, we have a lot of questions to ask you. I think it's because we see how important this seat is for all the things that you mentioned. You know, the county has a huge budget and affects a lot of what goes on in the county. So I think first I'll start off with a question here. You noted that you support the Green New Deal, However, it wasn't something you'd prioritize if and when there is a budget shortfall, which in your questionnaire you mentioned we're heading into due to COVID-19. And why is a green economy something you're willing to put off?
Um, it's not that I'm willing to put it off, but I think it has to be part of a coherent plan to move us forward. And within that, so I mean, we absolutely have to incorporate those ideals, those concepts into everything else we do. So I guess it's not that I want to put it off but it has to be part of everything else we do. So I don't see it as a separate thing and, oh, we're going to do a green economy. The green economy is part of everything else that we must do as we move forward. Does that make sense? I think, we absolutely need to incorporate those concepts and those ideals into land use and planning and housing starts. We absolutely have to incorporate those concepts into how we manage the homelessness issue. And again, because that's so interrelated with housing, we absolutely have to manage that, incorporate those ideals into establishing a climate action plan and moving that forward. And at SMUD, I mean, we're fostering that green economy on a regular basis through our solar programs, through the incentives we offer for energy efficiency, for other ways to reduce your carbon output, electric vehicles. So I guess my answer is yes, let's do all those things, but as in a almost as an organic, coherent part of what we do on a normal basis.
Great, thanks. And this is just a quick question. Will you have to leave the SMUD board if you get elected to this position?
It's a good question. I'm not sure if I would legally have to do it, but I would do it. I mean, there's really no way to manage both of those jobs effectively. Being on the SMUD board is not a full-time job. It's depending on the week and the issue and the schedule of things that we're doing, it might be anywhere from 10 hours a week on up to sometimes 20, but it's not a full-time job. Being a county supervisor certainly is, and I wouldn't attempt to do both.
Great. Okay, so we were just speaking of budgets. So the next question we have is, did you know that over 70% of the county budget goes to law enforcement and the carceral system? What changes would you make to prioritize people and our climate crisis if we're elected?
So I am. Let me say two things about that. First of all, we absolutely need a sheriff's department that is responsive and is efficient and is effective and that is there when we need it. We also need to make sure that our health and human services programs and roads and bridges are maintained, the rest of the county infrastructure. And so these are going to be competing priorities. I am all about I guess an ounce of prevention over a pound of cure. And to a great degree, the money that we spend preventing people and issues from becoming criminal activity, that's money well spent. And whether that's dealing more effectively with people who are mentally ill before it becomes a law enforcement issue. Incarcerating people who are mentally ill is absolutely the worst thing to do. It makes the problem worse. It does not help them. It does not help the issues that they may have caused that cause somebody to call 911 or call the sheriff's department. So we absolutely have to deal more effectively with that. We also have to deal more effectively with our homeless issues and get people into sustainable, stable housing that meets their needs, that meets our needs. Those are dollars that are well spent because it's less expensive to keep somebody in a home stable than it is to run them through a revolving door of the justice system. So these are not easy decisions to make, and they're not easy considerations. And but we absolutely have to start looking at it from that standpoint. An ounce of prevention over a pound of cure.
So just to put a point on that, because that sounds like what we're in line with in some ways, are you willing to commit to moving some of the funds that are spent, especially on the sheriff, who takes up a huge amount of the budget and often overruns his part of the budget, and putting that into other prevention and community programs?
So here's my problem with when you ask me to commit to something. I mean, I certainly have a pretty good idea of, yes, I understand that the sheriff's budget takes up about 70% of the county budget. I understand that and that much of the rest of the money is earmarked and, the county funds come from a lot of different places, and it's not always easy to say, well, we're going to spend some of these dollars on something else. It's earmarked and you can't touch it. But we don't know how bad the problem's going to be next year. We know it's going to be tough, but we don't know how bad. So when you ask me to commit to something, I just can't do that. What I can do is tell you that I will absolutely be looking at that budget with a fine-tooth comb, making sure that the critical services that we need, law enforcement, health and human services, public health, all of those have enough funding to do the jobs that they need to do. That's the best I can do for you. I guess I would add that in addition to what we spend on the sheriff's department to do its job, what is I find entirely unconscionable is that we're also spending money on settlements for lawsuits related to poor care at the jail, in some cases sexual harassment issues and abuse of force. That has to end. Those are dollars that do nobody any good, and they take away from our ability to do the real job, the real work that the county has to do.
Great. Yeah. And I realize commitment can be a delicate term.
It's just, we don't, in general, we don't know yet what we don't know about the budget. We don't know how much money we may get from another stimulus package. We don't know how deep the hole is going to be. And, as much as I've been looking into this from the outside, I mean, I'm still not privy to everything that a sitting supervisor knows, or the county staff knows. And so, before I commit to anything, I mean, I have to have that information.
Right. So I'm just going to do a time check here. We have about 5 minutes left. We'll potentially, hopefully we'll get it within 5 minutes. And we'd like to give you, 30 seconds at the end at the very least to give yourself a kind of closing comment. So I'll try and get some more questions in here. So Sacramento County was the first county in California to adopt an environmental justice element into its general plan as required by SB 1000. Given that 2 of the 4 environmental justice communities identified are within District 3, North Highlands, Foothill Farms, and West Arden Arcade, how will you ensure that the county puts this planning into action?
So one thing that I'm really proud of, again, that SMUD has done, and I take no credit for this other than, as a board member, you kind of create the atmosphere for these things to happen. SMUD's gone ahead and created what we call our Sustainable Communities Initiative. It's a way to look at all of the negative impacts around our community. And this is based on SMUD service territory, which is basically all of Sacramento County. Look at all of the negative impacts. So that's everything from the Cal Enviro screen, where SMUD's power plants are that are having an adverse impact on some communities, but also poverty, food deserts, lack of health care. There's a wide variety of other inputs that you can layer onto that. It also looks at the positive side. Where are the grants? Where are the state and federal dollars available to address these problems? And then how can we as a community bring all of that to bear on those communities that are most negatively impacted by everything, by those negative factors? And so that's something that SMUD has put together. As a member of the County Board of Supervisors, I would absolutely want to get the county staff more involved, and again, collaborating with SMUD, the Air Quality Management District, the city where it's feasible, and other agencies to say, how can we pool our resources? How can we make the best difference for those communities that need our help the most?
Excellent. So I got a question from the chat. As you might know, in the city, there is a campaign for the people's budget, which is, trying to change the way that we're spending the budget. We just talked about the fact that you don't know the whole budget, and you're interested in changes there. Are you supportive of participatory budgeting? So groups coming together to give proposals on how the budget should be changed?
Absolutely. And we've seen the need for that just in the last couple of weeks when the county was talking about how to allocate the CARES Act funding. And, they $181 million from the federal government. How should that be allocated? The initial process was a black box, no public input, and the result, frankly, was a travesty. And it was an internal black box too. That's the real problem. They allocated the money into this bucket of salaries. That's one issue, but okay, let's say they did that. Now there's a commensurate amount of money that is available in the general fund. So what they did really was say, here's restricted money. We're going to use it in a manner that is okay by the restrictions. Now we have a commensurate amount of unrestricted money that we can work with. What got lost in that is the county health department didn't get the money they needed for the basic services that the federal dollars were intended for, which is testing for COVID-19, contact tracing, PPEs, public outreach in languages and culturally sensitive ways, and food service for people, for the food bank, and people who rely on those services. So nowhere did that. Where was that connection not made? That the county health department didn't know that there was this other pot of money that they could have gone to, and that allowed for 7 weeks those critical services to go unfunded. It's unconscionable. Don Natoli is the nicest man you will ever meet. I've known him for 20 years. I have never seen him angry. He was livid at that meeting, as well he should have been, that this connection was not made. So that absolutely has to happen. That could have happened if there had been more public input and if there had been a more transparent process. And I'm absolutely committed to that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'll give you about 20 seconds to kind of close yourself out.
Sure. Look, there's no such thing as a perfect candidate, and I may not be your perfect candidate, but I am the best guy to do this job, to push your agenda forward in a way that makes sense for Sacramento County. I've got the track record that proves that at SMUD, and actually before my service on the SMUD board, I mean, I've volunteered to plant trees in Sacramento County for 20 years. We planted over 2,000 trees. I volunteer in the community in other ways. I've promoted clean energy in various jobs before I got on the SMUD board in a number of different ways. So this is part of who I am, part of my DNA. I want to take this process forward into Sacramento County.
Well, thank you so much for being here. That was Gregg Fishman, who's running for the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, District 3. And
thank you.
Now we're going to kick you out.
Okay, I'm gone.
Okay.